Welcome to Coffee Break with Police Experts. I am Wayne Parm, one of the editors at Police Magazine. Today, let's talk about using your patrol vehicle engine block for cover. Well, we found a guy who can answer questions related to that and provide some insights and tips. Dustin Mowery recently retired after 27 years in Central Ohio law enforcement. His career included roles in patrol, narcotics, and is both a member and the leader of his department's special response team. He also served on the Firearms and Defensive Tactics units, contributing to training efforts with OTOA and OPOTA. Dustin helped develop key programs such as Solo Officer Response to Active Threats, Defensive Tactics, and Basic SWAT. He now works as a product specialist at Team Wendy, supporting protective gear solutions for military and first responders. Dustin, welcome.
Hi, Wayne. How are you today?
Well, today, and to set it up, you know this backstory, but I'll share it on video also. At Police Magazine, not too long ago, Team Wendy shared some photos with us, and an officer was taking cover with a patrol rifle behind the front of the patrol vehicle, and we thought about, the old approach of the way officers can take cover behind the front of a vehicle because of the engine block, and we thought we need to talk to somebody about this. And Dustin, I understand you're a guy who knows a lot about using your vehicle for cover, so I guess we could just start big and talk about why and when officers use their vehicle for cover, and we'll move through other locations, whether it be the front end or somewhere else. And of course, using the bulk of that front end, you don't always have to be one fender side or the other. Like you've shared with me before, if you're at the back of a vehicle and that's out in front of you, you've got more vehicle in front of you.
Correct.
So yeah, we'll just go with we'll start big. And give the floor to you.
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend on the situation. Obviously, always situation dependent, but also looking at and thinking about it's also terrain dependent, right? So let's talk about kind of big what you're talking about, and let's say using the engine block as cover. Most of the time, we see that engagements or in situations where officers are arriving. The situation is already occurring, it's ongoing, and officers are rolling up, they're turning their cars sideways to put it, long ways across the situation, and then they'll get out, get their rifles or shotguns or hopefully some type of long gun, and then they'll go into it and they'll start using that engine block as cover. We don't initially see that, or we don't see that initially when they are doing the traffic stop and the gunfight starts, or it's an ambush or something like that, because if you do that or go behind the engine block and hunker down behind it, most of the time guys will want to stay on that piece of cover and they don't want to move. And that is not going to be a good thing for you necessarily. The other issue is that, yes, the engine block is a great piece of cover. It can absorb a lot of rounds for a long time. However, the bad guy or the suspect, however you want to look at that, is trying to shoot at you. So if they see that their rounds are going low or they're missing and not getting the effect, just like we would do, they are going to move the muzzle of their weapon up, and they're going to start, putting rounds up into the hood of the car. Those could skip, still hit you in the face, arms, or whatnot. So what we suggest, and when I'm teaching vehicle classes, is get off of the vehicle. So we say weapons distance away from that, or 1 step away and weapons distance. So if I can get away from the car, if I'm specifically using a rifle, getting off that vehicle so I can maneuver around the car, but it's going to give me a better angle from the vehicle. So if the rounds do skip, I'm not going to catch those rounds in the face.
I guess also if you're glued closely to the side of that vehicle, between round skipping and some penetration there, you're also more exposed to shrapnel.
You are,
if
absolutely.
You're close in.
Yes, absolutely, and a lot more shrapnel can come in there, and it's just, it cements you to that vehicle, and you don't want to do that. Mobility is going to be one of your biggest friends there.
Well, how do you use the front end of that vehicle for cover, and still maintain visual contact with the subject? Take your shots at the subject. How do you not expose yourself when you're trying to keep eyes on them or fire those rounds off?
So things you can do, again, keeping distance a little bit, weapons distance. What we say is one step in a weapon away. So I'd be one step away from the car, or a step and a half, and then my muzzle from the weapon that I have, either a rifle or a pistol. I'm going to be away from that. The other thing, again, if I need to take a knee and get behind the vehicle because to lower my exposure, yes, I will do that and get behind that. But in all reality, what you want to do is you want to maintain mobility, again, because the suspect, if he loses sight of you, what is he going to do? He's going to start moving on you. So getting lower to the ground and then cementing yourself there is not really going to be the issue, or is not going to help you. The other thing I think that a lot of people think about or talk about in law enforcement is we always talk about the tactics portion of this. And I'm not saying tactics aren't important, because they are. And I think we've done a pretty good job in law enforcement in the last several years, in my career in 27 years, but even more so, let's say 40. We've done a very good job of looking at the use of tactics and how to be better at that. But in all reality, where we're having the issue is it's a shooting problem. And we have to teach officers how to be more dynamic or aggressive when they're shooting, when the shooting starts. How do we know that officers are not doing well in a shooting? It's super simple, right? We can look at two different things. We can look at body cam video, and you can see how officers are moving and getting around their vehicle when the incident happens. But also we can look at the FBI stats. Most say, right, and again, this is dependent on where you are in the country, but it's usually a 13 to 17% hit ratio. So let's cop math that and say it's 20%, right? And if we fire 10 rounds at them, we're only going to hit them with 2. Predominantly, we're going to hit them in the legs, and we're going to hit them in the stomach. That is not putting the suspect down and stopping the aggression, which isn't ultimately what we want to do, correct? So if we start looking at the way that we're training officers in either a practical way of training or a performance-based way of training, what you'll see is officers are going to do better in these gunfights. And you can see the agencies that use practical or performance shooting for their training model are actually doing better throughout the shootings that they have.
My mind goes back to something you mentioned a few minutes ago, that traffic stop that goes bad. And, that all too frequently happens.
Yes.
How can the officer use that vehicle for cover in that situation? Of course, you're probably right behind their vehicle.
Yeah.
There's not much room to work with. Do you create distance? What's the best approach?
Yes. So it depends on where you are on the vehicle, right? So you do your traffic stop, and you're paying attention to the indicators that are going on, and you're looking at where is the traffic stop happening. There's really 3 different places that the gunfight starts. You're either at the vehicle, you're halfway there between bumper to bumper is a good way to think about that. I call it no man's land, or I'm just exiting the vehicle. If I'm at the car and the gunfight starts, predominantly I want to move to the rear of their vehicle. I don't want to stay what I call in the cone of fire, especially on a driver side approach. I want to move out of that cone of fire, which is anywhere from the muzzle and out to about a 45-degree angle each direction, left or right. And you see that a lot of times where officers will stay in that cone of fire and they'll start shooting. If I move to the back of their vehicle and I start to maneuver around, you're going to increase the probability that you're going to survive the gunfight. I'm not saying you're not going to get impacted. What I'm saying is that you're going to survive the gunfight by moving to the rear of the vehicle. And then you're going to start getting your gun out of the holster and start shooting. The other thing we have to think about is when those incidents happen, and we've seen hundreds of them on body camera, and you can again look at the FBI stats. What you predominantly see, or you see a lot of times, is officers start shooting at the pace of panic, right? So why is that happening? Is it because it's a tactics problem, or is it because they're not confident with their weapon? I'm going to say it's because they're not confident with their weapon. It goes back to making them confident with the gun that they have when they're on duty every single day. Just like driving a car. The first time you got in a car, it probably did not look good, right? You were probably, especially if it was a stick shift, you're trying to figure out all the pedals and you're going around, right? And I explained to police officers in a way of, okay, remember the first time you ran lights and sirens by yourself in the cruiser and there was no FTO there. How did that look? And everybody's like, well, it wasn't good. I'm like, okay, let's talk through that. Why was it not good? Well, I was trying to roll the windows up and I had the music blaring and I'm turning that down and I had my coffee and there was 15 million things going on, right? And I'm like, okay, who here has 10 years or more on, 15 years or more? You guys raise their hand in class. I'm like, okay, what's that pursuit look like now? And everybody jokingly says, well, I'm steering the car with my knee. I'm rolling the window up. I'm talking on the radio. I'm drinking coffee. I'm doing all these other things, right? And I'm like, why are you able to do that? Well, because I've done it a bunch. It's the same way with shooting, right? So again, I'm not saying that tactics are not important. They are very important. But what we're in reality talking about is a shooting issue, not a tactics issue. On a traffic stop, again, depending on if I'm around his car and the gunfight starts, once there's a pause in the shooting and he's either down or I'm not sure where he is because he moved, it's nighttime, there's, whatever, it's raining or snowing or whatever. In that pause, move to the back of your car or bounce to another vehicle. If you're on the street and there's vehicles behind you or beside you, start maneuvering on them and get to a better position. In the long run, that's going to help you. Again, mobility is going to help you in this situation, but the most important thing is going to be the shooting piece.
And that that mobility allows you to create that distance and space.
Absolutely, yes. And then I can maneuver to a second, third, fourth car, and I can start to maneuver on him, and then I can get on the radio and start calling for backup and other officers, and then the cavalry can start to arrive and come to me.
I guess it doesn't go as easily when an armed subject comes out of the car and you try to retreat all the way to the back of your own. You just
don't do that.
Too much movement.
Yeah, don't do that.
Can't stay focused on them.
No. I mean, if you look at the vehicle, where officers predominantly park their car on a traffic stop, right? So the rear of the vehicle to let's say the front of their car is anywhere between 15 and 17 yards. So that's a pretty good shot, right? So if you take out that 5 or 6 feet from the front of their vehicle and you get to their door, you're still at 12, 13 yards, maybe right in that area. And what's happening is when he's getting out of the vehicle, and if you're running to the back of the car, you're giving them all the time in the world to steady their hand, bring the gun up, and start shooting at you, right? And the way I explain that again is what you've just done is you've taken all this time, right, that you had to maneuver, and because you're taking the time to run to the back of your vehicle, you're pushing that time over to the bad guy, and you're just saying, I don't want that time. And of course, what does the bad guy do? He takes all that time and says, oh, perfect, thank you, officer. And then he'll start putting very precise rounds on you because he's not having a gun pointing at him, you're running away. He's now the predator, you're the prey type of mentality.
So basically, face the fight, straight on, using the advantages of his car movement, and then when a break allows, you can create more distance.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. You've got to be aggressive in the movement and also in the shooting. And that's why when you're training and you're shooting and you're even out on the range, if you're doing, what most firearms instructors will call flat range shooting. So we've got, 10, 14, 15 guys on the same line, flat range shooting. You have to learn as an officer how to shoot aggressively. And there's ways that you can go about that with practical or performance shooting, and you can figure out what's going on with your pistol or rifle.
Now, if we look at the other situation where you arrive and you have time to position a vehicle, where it's a known scenario underway, how do you approach that? How do you position your vehicle based on the threat and the location of the threat and so forth?
So what we've seen most of the time as officers will do is they will turn their car broadside to the situation, and they will start using the whole vehicle from the side as the piece of cover. Again, it's a good idea, understanding that rounds obviously go through glass. They will go through A pillars. I know there are people out there that say, well, rounds don't go through A pillar, B pillar, C pillar. Yes, they do. But what you're doing is you're using a piece of cover, that vehicle, for an undetermined amount of time. And that's kind of the way that I explain cover, and specifically cars. specifically vehicles, is it's a good piece of cover, or it's cover used for an undetermined amount of time, right? Because those rounds are coming into you, they're going to deflect and deform and move off for an undetermined amount of time. If they start skipping, and you're like, okay, I'm good for now, well, that may not last forever. That may only last for a few seconds. So again, that's why mobility is important. I don't want to hunker down or get glued to where this position is, because I may need to move.
Really, as long as that bad guy has the opportunity for mobility and change angle, nothing's secure permanently, is basically what you point out.
Absolutely.
I'd like to kind of branch over to a side vehicle topic. Of course, right now, battery electric vehicles, pretty much administrative duty.
Yeah.
A few agencies have tried them on patrol.
Yeah.
But I guess there could be a situation where somebody administrative, maybe a chief drives an administrative vehicle that's battery electric. Won't say which brands. How is all that vehicle ballistic protection, somewhat, not perfectly, how's all that going to change when you don't have an engine block? What kind of tactics will have to be taught for that?
Again, I don't think we really have to change the tactic. I think we can still use the same principles that we have been using in the past, of using the vehicle for cover, trying to get much of the vehicle between us and the suspect as possible. But it's definitely going to change the dynamic. The other thing to think about or remember too is when you have a patrol car, right, there's a lot of other things in that patrol car that are going to help you deflect, slow down, deform bullets for an undetermined amount of time, right? So you've got your MDTs, you've got cages in the back, you've got patrol boxes, where you're storing a lot of other equipment. All of that stuff in that car will slow those rounds down. Will it permanently stop them? I've seen some incidents where the back of a vehicle has taken a lot of rounds, 50, 60 rounds from a suspect, and it has stopped those rounds. But it's because of all the other stuff in the back of the vehicle. The EV vehicles, from my understanding, those batteries are on the bottom of the car. So it's not necessarily going to help you or aid that much with stopping rounds.
Well, I guess visually, the profile of the vehicle would still give you some concealment, even if you don't have shielding.
Right. Yes. It will still give you some shielding and give you the ability to use that vehicle for cover, for sure.
What about, are there differences when you consider vehicle cover between, a four-door patrol sedan type vehicle and an SUV? One thing that comes to mind is, do you have more exposure when a vehicle has higher ground clearance? Do you have to worry about rounds coming off the asphalt?
Yes, you do. You have to worry about that, but again, most of the time, the bad guy and the officer, or the suspect and the officer, this is a very mobile situation. The officer or the bad guy is maneuvering as quick as they can. So you'll see them use that for pieces of cover. Again, using the A, B, or C pillar for cover is good for a moment, but you're only talking about something that is 5, maybe 6 inches wide. And I call the pillars transitional cover. So I'm moving from one piece of hard cover, let's say like the conversation started originally with the engine block, and I'm trying to maneuver to the rear of the vehicle because there's more mass, there are more things. That you got like I said, the patrol box, you've got all these other things in the back of the car, and I'm moving because I need to get a better angle on the suspect, or the suspect's moving on me. But as I'm moving to those other pieces of cover, or even another vehicle, I see an opening on the suspect. I see right there, and I'm at that B pillar or C pillar. Well, I can take a few shots and get some rounds on the suspect, and then I can continue to move and get to a better position. So that's why I call them transitional cover. They're not hard cover.
So it sounds like some of the key elements really involved aren't metal and rubber and upholstery, is really instincts, training to be a better shooter, and maintaining that mobility and not being locked into place.
Yes, absolutely. Use the piece of cover, but understand that it's not going to be cover forever. because the bad guy has a vote. He has a vote in the fight just like we do, right? It's just, and I explain it to officers as, this is like if you watch a boxing match or MMA or any type of physical fight, right? Or a fight that you've been in. How many times have you been in a physical altercation where it started and stopped in the same exact spot you were standing? That doesn't happen. It's the whole fight is a living, breathing, moving ball, right? It's everybody's maneuvering, and we're trying to get better angles on people to put them down, either with some type of strike, or if a takedown is needed, or if that's going to be a ballistic type of situation that we need to use ballistics to solve that type of situation.
Well, when it comes to using vehicles for cover, you have taught me the majority of it's really not about the vehicle. Am I right?
Yeah. When the situation needs to be solved with a gun, it's about the gun. It's about the gunfight and shooting better. Yes, you can use the cover, and I'm not saying don't use the cover. I'm 100% advocating using that cover, but don't overthink it. Think about learning to shoot better and putting rounds on target to put the suspect down and stop that aggression.
And ultimately, it's all about stopping the threat and going 100%. Home safely.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, Dustin, you brought some great topics to the table today. We appreciate this, and hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Absolutely.